Ever wondered why your champion suddenly hits like a wet noodle? Or your debuffs just refuse to land? That's Affinity doing its thing. Recently, Plarium came up with this infographic trying to explain the concept, and after looking at it, rather than like a aha moment, when I looked at it, it was more like, huh? So today I try to explain Affinity in the simplest way possible, right? Um, and the first thing is just what Affinity is. So in Raid, every champion has an affinity. It's basically their element, right? And if we just take a look, there's four of them. Magic is blue, Spirit is green, Force is red, and Void is purple. You always see a champion's affinity right next to their portrait, right? So affinity works sort of exactly like rock paper scissors. Blue magic beats green spirit beats red force, and red force beats blue magic. And purple void ignores all of that, right? There's no advantage, no disadvantage. It's just void is a separate thing. So next is the arrow system, right? In Raid, they have like this visual cue. Like when you're in battle, the game gives you a little bit of a shortcut, so you don't have to remember all of that. As that little like triangular arrow hovering above the enemy champion when it's your turn to take action. And the green arrow, that means you have an advantage. The yellow arrow means neutral. And if you see the red arrow, which is shown here, um, that means disadvantage, right? If you remember nothing from this video, just remember red arrow is bad. So why does affinity matter? Um, Affinity affects like three huge things: how much damage you deal, what kind of hit you land, and whether your debuffs can land at all. This is where those hit types comes in, right? There are four possible hit types in Raid. The first one is called a normal hit, just regular damage. Second one is called critical hit. You do extra damage based on the amount of critical damage that you have, that stat you have on the champion. The third one is called a strong hit. It's just plus 30% damage on the normal hit. And then the fourth one is called a weak hit. It's the minus 30% damage, and there will be no debuffs, right? So when you attack with an affinity advantage, that's that like green arrow we talked about, you cannot weak it. You get a chance for strong hits. You get 15% free crit rate on your champion. That means your damage is going to be higher and your debuffs are going to be a lot more reliable, right? Um, so the green arrow fights are your generally that's your comfort zone. Realistically, your damage dealer should be crit capped at 100% crit rate, so they don't benefit from like the affinity advantage at all. Actually, it's just gonna be a crit regardless. So uh, the affinity advantage more benefits things like your debuffers, your supports, your tanks, the champions that may not have 100% crit rate built. Like they shouldn't be, right? They shouldn't be. Like if you're the kind of cycle that's running around with like a full crit arbiter, who hurt you? Anyways, so these tanks and supports, they will get a 15% more chance to crit with the affinity advantage. And if there is no crit, they'll still have a chance to land a strong hit, right? Which is plus 30% damage. But like, and again, like if your Alva, just as an example, normally attacks for say like 1,000 damage against like a green spirit affinity opponent, um, now you're suddenly doing a strong hit and you're slapping them for 1,300 damage. Do you care? Like, not really, right? That's not the most important thing of affinity. Um, Next one is neutral affinity. So that's the yellow arrow. And there's going to be no bonuses, no penalties, no strong hits, and no weak hits, right? Your crit rate exactly what the stats say. And it's going to be very simple, very clean, very predictable. affinity disadvantage, that's that red arrow. Now that's where the dangerous one, right? When you see a red arrow, your damage is gonna be reduced by 20% straight up. You will have a 35% chance to weak hit. Now, weak hit cannot apply debuffs, cannot strong hit, and your effective crit rate is going to be capped at 65%, no matter how high your stats are. Now, I know there are some people, they're thinking they can outsmart the system, just build your nukers with 135% crit rate, and you go golden. Doesn't work like that, right? That's why your debuffs randomly fail. They're not random. Probably getting weak hits. That's why they're failing. Now, I do want to make a note that there are some champions out there whose skills just reads place so and so debuff, and then there's no text that says like an attack is involved. Those are like special cases. Um, since there's like no hit, affinity rule actually does not apply, and you will always place the debuff as long as you meet the resistance accuracy threshold. Just a very common example, like think Geomancer's HP burn, right? Geomancer is a red champion, and his HP burn will go on the spirit champions without weak hits or affinity checks. Just a common example. Um, Now, why are weak hits so bad? Weak hits do two awful things, right? Not only do they do less damage, they completely block debuffs. There's not gonna be any like provoke, no decreased defense, no poison, nothing, right? Like no debuffs gets landed. Um, if you have a champion whose only job is to do debuffs and you're attacking into like a red arrow, you're basically gambling away your turn at that point with like a 65-35 flip, and that's not good. So that's why void champions are so strong. They never have the advantage, but they never have a disadvantage either, and that's very important. We talk about affinity advantage being basically useless on a nuker. So void nukers actually they just have no weak hits, no force damage penalty, and is very consistent. And in raid, a game that's full of layers of RNG on top of layers of RNG on top of layers of more RNG. Like players value consistency very much. Um, so here's the ultra simple rules that you can actually use, right? Like if you see a green arrow, just go nuts. If you see a yellow arrow, it's fine. But if you see a red arrow, avoid it if possible. Your valuable debuff, your single target skills, look for another target if you have the chance. If you follow just that, your win rate probably already jumps up, I think. So just to wrap up, affinity isn't really about memorizing math, right? It's about knowing when your champions is allowed to succeed. Just check affinities before fights. Try to match your opponent, and for the love of God, stop bringing in scissors into a full team of rocks. Okay? Okay.